The guy who worked for my father was one of those early hi-fi pioneers. This was decades before stereo ever came around. This was the era when hi-fi was something you had to build yourself as an experimenter, and all that was available commercially were either little table radios or great big, radio phonograph wooden furniture pieces is really what they were. But I remember he had this really cool futuristic looking tone arm and a record player, of course, turntable. And as I remember the turntable, this stuff looked like studio quality at the time, but it was mounted on this slab of exotic looking wood and supported by 4 beer cans. Hams, I'm pretty sure they were. Anyway, he was into building all this cool stuff, and I was just kind of mesmerized by it. It was all tube gear, of course, because that's all there was at the time. And as I started to get a little bit older, he began to give me some of his cast-off pieces, although I didn't really know much what to do with them at the time. Then when I was 11 or 12, I met a guy whose business was building commercial control equipment in his garage. I went over there as part of a Boy Scout merit badge project one time, thinking it would be real easy, and boy was I ever wrong. The requirement was simple, just carve 3 things, and you got the merit badge. So when I showed up at his house with my 3 things, I immediately started to worry when I saw this guy, because he looked so tough. Looked like Clint Eastwood, like a unshaven version, and in fact this guy was a Korean War veteran, so he was just tough as nails and just gave no quarter. At any rate, I introduced myself and showed him my 3 little wood carvings, and he opened the door and said, "Follow me." And we walked across the floor of his shop over to where his bandsaw was. And he gave me a quick little glance, and he turned on the bandsaw, and he said, "This is a bandsaw." Piled up my 3 carvings and ran them through the saw, first one way, then the other way, and then tossed them into the trash barrel, turned off the saw. Looked back at me and said, "That's what I think of your projects, and therefore, that's what I think of you." See, he had this theory, pretty good theory, that whenever a person makes something, he's leaving behind a relic of what his values were at that time. This is solid evidence of what was going on, and he could tell. And he was right that I really hadn't put that much energy, certainly not my whole heart and effort into making those wood carvings, and he busted me on it. Not like today, not where self-esteem seems to be the goal. No, he busted me, and he busted me hard. And it turned out to be a real good thing, because severely humbled as I was, I stuck it out, and I stayed around there for it seemed like weeks working on carving so many things, actually helping clean up his shop, learning how to sharpen all the tools, generally learning how to hang out with a real craftsman in a shop and get stuff done, pay attention. Now, he had a son about 4 or 5 years older than I was at that time who was into building ham radio stuff, which I thought was really interesting. And thinking back on both the ham radio gear and especially the stuff that this guy's father made, it had an aesthetic component to it that just looked so perfect. It had magic. When you looked at it, I didn't even know what the stuff did. And he'd explain to me, well, this is a control system for some refinery process. And one of his heaviest things that he was working on was the control panel went onto the Nautilus submarine, the first nuclear submarine. It was the heating and ventilation control panel for the whole sub. He had it right there in his garage shop. That's how heavy this cat was. At any rate, the stuff that he made just exuded this magic far above and beyond whatever its primary functional purpose was. And I wanted to grab some of that. I thought, this guy's like Merlin the magician, because he can spin out this stuff that just looks so cool, man. This guy's got some power. So I really owe him a lot, because he put up with me, as did his older son, a son older than me, that is, to hang around there for really a long time. And over the years, we built any number of projects, all vacuum tube stuff out in the old man's shop. Radio transmitters up to several hundred watts, and modulators, Receivers, tough to make, but made some anyway. They didn't work so well. But and giant power supplies. I remember I made a 1,000-watt transmitter power supply. That was a pretty big deal. That would kill you without even thinking about it, putting out, what, 4,000 volts, I think it did. So at any rate, I learned a lot of the basics because of these guys. Stan Stilson was the father. Dave Stilson was the son. Well, many years later, when I was going to college in Berkeley, I started playing in a rock and roll band. And one night on the gig, the keyboard player's Sun 200S amplifier blew up, smoked out big time. Well, of course, we didn't have 2 nickels between us, so he was real worried the next day about how he was going to fix it, or could it be fixed, and blah, blah, blah. That was the end of the band. You know, he was really worried. Well, I told him, I finally convinced him that if I couldn't fix it, at least I knew enough not to do any harm. And it turned out the fix wasn't that hard. Yeah, it burned out some resistors and so forth, but it's a typical tube failure scenario. So I got it all fixed up and working good, and while he watched the whole process, he was formulating something in his mind, and he sprung it on me the next day. He said, "Hey, you know what? Let's open a music store together." Well, what do we know about opening a music store? I don't know, that's a craze, you know. And he said, "Well, no, actually, everybody's playing in bands around here now, and there's going to be a huge need for somebody that can fix stuff like I just saw you do yesterday." And he was right. So we went down and rented some old Chinese grocery store. Matter of fact, the original shop was in the meat locker. It was nice, insulated with a foot-thick door with that giant latch and all of that stuff. And in no time at all, I was doing all of the repairs and maintenance for all the big, heavy bands in the San Francisco scene at that time, and there were lots of them. Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, Quicksilver Messenger Service, Steve Miller, Sons of Champlin, Carlos Santana, and dozens of bands that you never heard of.